we're talking here in London. How did you get from Nigeria to London?
So as I was ministering in Nigeria and working in the church as one of the sort of assistant pastors, I was thinking I would like to do that alongside helping with the Bible translation agency because of my knowledge of Greek and Hebrew. So I was looking to work with the Nigerian Bible Translation Trust, which is based in central Nigeria. But then the opportunity came to further my theological education in the UK to do a master's degree in theology. And so I started thinking, okay, so what's God saying here? And then our church, my pastor said, well, if I go, that they would like me to plant a church. And so I felt, well, this sounds great to me. So I opted for the option of coming to the UK as a missionary to help plant the church. So that's why I came, to study and to plant the church in the UK.
What was it like going from Nigeria to here in London?
It was a big culture shock because I'm coming from a Pentecostal background. And when I came to the UK, I didn't plant that church. I decided to go into a completely different denomination, a Baptist church, which was a white British Baptist church, very different from an African Nigerian Pentecostal church. So one of the culture shocks I had was, of course, we are in an African Pentecostal. When people are singing and praising God, it's like you can blow off the roof and people dancing and everything. But from this Baptist church, everything was singing hymns in a reflective style, very different.
Not so much roof blowing.
No. Very quiet, very modest.
And you're a bit unique because weren't you a Nigerian pastor in a white Baptist church?
Yes, I think so. I started ministering in this church, became the youth minister, and then later became student pastor, co-pastor in that sort of order. When I became the minister in this church in 2007, I didn't realize it was a pioneering role. I realized that I became the first African minister within its 100 years history. And so it was kind of like, oh, wow, I didn't know I was making history in that sense. And then I realized that there were others who were doing it or who have done it before me. And then it was kind of an eye-opener that God must be doing something new here, something different here. And I came across other pastors who have come as missionaries, being sent from either Nigeria or Ghana and various places. But it was quite pioneering and quite exciting in terms of what God was doing.
Now, you were doing some study here?
Yes, doing a lot of research and studying around the growth of African churches in the British context and looking at that phenomenon of what we call reverse mission. That is the idea of missionaries coming from Africa, Latin America, Asia, and the Caribbean to European context as missionaries. So I've met a lot of refugees, economic migrants, or missionary migrants, as I would call them, who are doing some great stuff here. So I've been doing a lot of research around that, which has led to various publications around African Christianity in the diaspora, particularly in the British context.
It's a bit surprising because a lot of people think of, churches from places like the West, England and America going to places like Africa. But you're saying that now the churches in Africa, South America, Korea are actually going to the West. Do they see that as their mission?
They do. I think increasingly a lot of people from the majority world or global South see Europe as a mission field. Whereas before, no one sees Europe as a mission field. It's kind of like, no, we send missionaries, not the other way around. But now UK is receiving a lot of missionaries. And people have been coming since the 60s. And this is why it's actually interesting that it's not necessarily a new phenomenon. But since the 90s, there's been attention drawn to it. And so a lot of pastors are coming. So, for example, every year in this country, there is a South Korea prayer movement in understanding that one of the first Christians that went to South Korea was from Wales. He was a Welsh guy who went there, died, but was able to spread scriptures among the South Koreans. And so a lot of South Koreans come to this country every year praying and engaging in evangelistic activities. So that's just one example. There are others, things that people are doing coming from different places, whether it's Central Asia or South Asia, coming to the UK as missionaries, coming as pastors.
Some of the larger churches in London are actually African churches.
Yes, they are. So, for example, within the Baptist Union, which is my own denomination, some of the largest churches are led by Africans. So we have a church called Trinity Baptist Church, which is led by Kingsley Apege, who is from Ghana, came to this country in the 80s. His church is seen as one of the largest. And there's another one, Calvary Baptist Church, led by another Ghanaian, Francis Sapong. These are some of the biggest churches within the Baptist Union. And then when you look at independent churches, you talk about Kingsway International Christian Center, led by Matthew Ashimolowo. Again, I think in the 90s, it was regarded as one of the largest churches in Western Europe. Now they have a 12-acre land, which they have bought recently, where they call it Prayer City, where they do all sorts of various things. So the largest churches are being led by Africans at the moment, which is quite exciting in a lot of ways.
What are some of the key traits of the African churches as they're growing?
There is something about African spirituality which doesn't lend itself to enlightenment thinking, which doesn't lend itself to too much doubt and speculation and cynicism. So there is something about the spiritual world and the awareness of that, and the understanding that the spiritual controls the physical. So a lot of African Christians will use that kind of expression. And so what that means is that when you have a problem, for example, you don't think of going to the doctors first. You don't think of the government solving your problem. The first point of contact is God. You pray. You fast, you seek God. Now, when you have that kind of spirituality, it creates an atmosphere of faith that grows, that trusts God in the midst of any opposition. And I think that's one of the key marks of African Christianity. It is deeply spiritual. It is based on faith. Even in the midst of adversity, whether there is food on the table or not, you continue to serve God. You don't doubt His existence because there is no food, because you trust that, yes, one day God is going to provide, so you live in hope. And so that keeps people going, and I think that's one of the key marks of African Christianity. Another thing is that it's very practical. Even though we have a lot of African theologians, but African Christianity is very, very practical. In the sense that it's geared towards helping people, it's geared towards meeting people's needs, meeting people exactly where they are in that sense. And so because of that, I think is a key mark of African Christianity, that it's very practical.
Geographically, the gospel has kind of covered the globe, and Jesus' word for us was that we should go to the ends of the earth. So what does going to the ends of the earth mean for you now?
I think what that means is to still remember that despite the successes that we are seeing in continents such as Africa, Latin America, there are still places where the gospel is still not there yet. Wycliffe Bible translators will let us know that there's still about 1.5 million people who don't have scripture in their own language. So there is still task to be achieved. There is still places to go to and share the gospel. It's good that we have the success, but I think ends of the earth means going beyond what we are currently seeing. And in my opinion, for that to happen, it would take Western missionaries and missionaries from the global south working in partnership to ensure that the ends of the earth is reached, so that those people who don't have scripture in their language can have that, and those unreached places that we still have at the moment, we can be able to go there and share the gospel of Christ.
This series is called Jesus the Game Changer. So Israel, how is Jesus the game changer for you?
I think Jesus is the game changer because when I look through church history, you see the life of someone like Paul, who persecuted the church, changed, and became a missionary who wrote half of the New Testament. That's Jesus the game changer. Only Jesus can do that. You see someone like Augustine, who wrestled with sin, and then later he found grace. And today we talk about Augustine, one of the church fathers. That is Jesus, the game changer. You look at Martin Luther, who talk about Reformation, and with other reformers in Europe. You look at what happened to him before and then how his life changed. Again, that's Jesus, the game changer. You look at Samuel Ajayi Crowther, Mary Slessor, Hannah Kilnan, who translated scriptures in West Africa, Daniel Zikate, who was influenced by Mary Slessor, and the list goes on. All these people, one thing they have in common is Jesus transforming their lives and changing them. But each individual became a pioneer that affected history, that affected a segment of society that we still talk about today and still write about. And so in that sense, when you look at it, the commonality is that Jesus transformed their lives and turned them from either an ex-slave, someone who was broken, someone who people have forgotten about, or someone who was thrown in the dust bin, who later became a pioneer of Pentecostalism in Nigeria. Only Jesus can do something like that, and so he's the game changer.